हरे कृष्णा। श्री राधा माधव अष्टसखी वृंद की जय, पंचतत्व भगवान की जय, राजा को जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा माई सुदर्शन की जय, श्री लक्ष्मी नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय. So welcome all to Shubha Mangalarati, and a short we'll now discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. So today's verse is so we are reading from first canto, chapter 9, text 45. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tatra Dundurbayo Nirdur Deva Manavavaditaha Sasamshayo Sadhavo Rakyam Katapetu Pushpa Vrishtayaham. So, word to word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Word to word meaning, Tatra, thereafter, Dunda Bhaya, drums, Niduhu were sounded, Deva, the demigods from other planets, Manava, men from all countries, Vaditaham, beaten by, Sasamsayo, praised, Sadavaha, honest, Ragim, by the royal order, Kataha by from the sky, Petuhu being to fall, began to fall, Pushpa Vrishtaya, a shower of flowers. Translation: thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor and the honest royal order commenced, demonstrations of honor and request, and from the sky fell shower of flowers. Purport: Bhishma Dev was respected both by human beings and the demigods. The human beings live on Earth and similar other planets in Bhur and Bhuvar group of planets, but the demigods live in Swar or heavenly planets, and all of them knew Bhishma Dev as a great warrior and devotee of the Lord. As a Mahajan or authority, he was on the level of Brahma, Narada and Shiva, although he was a human being. Qualification on par with demigods is possible only on attainment of spiritual perfection. Thus, Bhishma Dev was known all over the universes, and during his time, interplanetary travel was affected by finer methods than the futile endeavors of mechanical spacecraft. When the distant planets were informed of the passing away of Bhishma Dev, all the inhabitants of the upper planets, as well as from the of the earth, dropped shower of flowers to show due respect to the departed great personality. The showering of flowers from heaven is a sign of recognition of great demigods, and it should never be compared to decoration of a dead body. The body of Bhishma Dev lost its material effects due to being surcharged with spiritual realization, and thus the body was spiritualized as when iron becomes red hot when in contact with fire. The body was fully self-realized soul. The body of a fully self-realized soul is not therefore affected, is not therefore accepted as material. Similar ceremonies are observed for spiritual bodies. The respect and recognition of Bhishma Dev are never to be imitated by artificial means, as it has become a fashion to observe the so-called Jayanti ceremony for any and every common man. According to authorized Shastras, such a Jayanti ceremony for an ordinary man, however exalted he may be materially, is an offense to the Lord, because Jayanti is reserved for the Lord when the Lord appears on the earth. Bhishma Dev was unique in his activity, and his passing away to the kingdom of God is also unique. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददान्ति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सह गण ललित विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे रामा 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 हरे हरे। So I'll try and read out the translation again. The translation goes as: thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell a shower of flowers. So today we'll be discussing on first canto, verse 9. First canto, chapter 9, verse number 45. We all have heard from the previous senior Vaishnavas as to how glorious the passing away of Bhishma Devi is, and he's exhibiting as to how a devotee has to quit his body. And in what we have been seeing, what is the mode of Bhishma Dev. We have all heard from our senior Vaishnavas as to how Bhishma Dev was meditating upon the beautiful form of Lord at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and fixing his mind upon that on the beautiful form of the Lord, he is waiting for Uttarayana to quit his body. So finally, that moment that Bhishma Dev was waiting, the Uttarayana has finally arrived, and Bhishma Dev is quitting his body. So in the purport, there are beautiful points that Srila Prabhupada has mentioned. So the first, maybe, it can be divided into three parts as to how Srila Prabhupada is mentioning how Bhishma Dev is on the level of demigods. Initially in the purport, Prabhupada has written as to how Bhishma Dev was not only respected by humans, but he was also respected by demigods. And Prabhupada makes a very strong statement here, stating that he was equivalent to the level of Brahma, Shiva, and Narada. So this is not something usual for somebody to compare a normal person to come up to the level of demigods, because only after one has performed so many austerities and has performed strong devotional service in that previous birth, only then can they attain the qualities of a demigod. So that is what is being mentioned even in the Vedas and the Shastras, that only if one has to perform various specified number of yagnas even to get on to the position of Indra. But here what we can understand is that Srila Prabhupada is making such a strong statement, telling that Bhishma Dev is no less than a demigod. He's up to he's on to level of demigods such as Brahma, Shiva, and Narada. So what we can understand is that anybody who becomes the devotee of a supreme personality of Godhead, he doesn't have to endeavor for acquiring qualities. He doesn't have to make he doesn't have to separately invest time in acquiring these qualities that demigods have. It could we have seen in even in Bhagavad Gita as to how Lord states 13 qualities, and he tells that anybody who has these qualities in them, they're very dear to me. So one who reads the Vedas and the Shastras without any guidance, they would be bewildered as to how can somebody acquire all these qualities. How can you find a person with all the qualities mentioned by the Lord? But when we come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, he lets us know that if one becomes a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he doesn't have to endeavor for anything else. So Bhishma Dev is teaching us as to how only by becoming just by becoming devotee of the Supreme Lord, one can get all the qualities that has been mentioned. So a devotee is no less than a demigod, because even just by becoming the devotee of the Lord, he inherits. It is not that he has to acquire them. It is not that he has to acquire those qualities. It is inherited. He automatically, once he becomes a devotee of the Lord, once an individual jivatma becomes, he surrenders to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, all these fine qualities that can be acquired only after performing various austerities, severe penances, can be seen in can be seen in a person as soon as he becomes a devotee. So that is how Bhishma Dev he being a Mahajan, he is being compared unto the level of the demigods. So why is that Prabhupada is comparing Bhishma Dev to the level of demigods? So I was hearing to one of the lectures, and there the Prabhuji was mentioning. So sometimes we are because we are affected by these three modes of material nature, and our senses are imperfect, we tend to even view whatever we view with these imperfect senses. It automatically it is automatically, we feel that it is imperfect. So because we are not bestowed with perfect senses, and we come into the contact with the material nature. So why is Bhishma Dev compared to the level of demigods? And that Prabhuji, he was giving an example as to how if there is a GBC in Delhi, and it consists of several Maharajas. So we know as to how the GBC has been composed by exalted devotees like Loknath Swami Maharaj, and His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and Radhanath Swami Maharaj. So when among all these devotees, when we add a new the name of a new devotee, or who is a neophyte, and but who is progressing rapidly in his bhakti, when among the exalted Vaishnavas, as I mentioned, along with these exalted Vaishnavas, if we try and add in the name of a new developing devotee, a rapidly progressing devotee, at that time we can understand as to what is how how glorious that devotee is, because we are mentioning him among the exalted devotees. So similarly here, that Prabhuji was mentioning, in order to emphasize what is the quality and how exalted Bhishma Dev is, that is why Srila Prabhupada is comparing him and stating that Bhishma Dev was no less to a demigod. So this is the first point that we can learn from Srila Prabhupada's purport today, that is, we as devotees don't have to endeavor for any of the qualities, or try to acquire any of the qualities. Just by becoming the servant of the Supreme Lord, we inherit all those qualities, and we don't have to make an extra effort in order to get those qualities. So this is the first point that Srila Prabhupada has tried to emphasize. And moving on to the second point is that Prabhupada has mentioned as to how Bhishma Dev, during the time of Bhishma Dev, interplanetary travel was affected by finer methods than the futile endeavors of mechanical spacecraft. So here Prabhupada is mentioning as to how I was hearing as to how when Srila Prabhupada was writing these purports at that point of time, this interplanetary traveling, that is sending the spacecrafts to another planet and stating that we can travel to another planet, is so nothing is impossible by the current technology of human. This was prevalent when Prabhupada was there, and many scientists, they used to come and cross question Srila Prabhupada on the same thing. And there are various interviews that Srila Prabhupada has given with the scientists, and he is how he is, so boldly he has gone. Srila Prabhupada has gone. Prabhupada's philosophy was so strong that scientists were easily defeated by Srila Prabhupada. So the same thing Srila Prabhupada he's mentioning here as to how Bhishma Dev was not only known in this planet, but he was also known in all the heavenly planets, including Bhuvar Loka. So it is not only Swarga Loka, even all the upper planetary system, middle planetary system, and even the lower planetary system knew how glorious Bhishma Dev was. So once it so happened that one of the devotees, he got a television. He had got a new television, and he got it to show it to Srila Prabhupada. And at the same time, it was so happening that the spacecrafts were being sent to the moon planet. So Srila Prabhupada was looking at this broadcast that was happening in the television, and all the devotees were, excited to see as to how, we are going to land on the moon, and see what is there on the moon. So Srila Prabhupada, his philosophy was so strong. His dependency on Shastras and the words of his guru was so strong. Srila Prabhupada looked at the television broadcast and he told, all this is nonsense. They've gone to the moon and they're going to get a handful of sand and stone. Just to get a handful of sand and stones, they've gone back, spending crores and crores of rupees on that spacecraft. They've just gone to bring some sand. But Srila Prabhupada tells that if you go to the Shastras and read, it tells as to how you can Srila Prabhupada himself has written a book on easy journey to other planets. There are various ways mentioned in the Shastras as to how you can travel to the other planets, provided you have a suitable body for it. We can see Narada Muni, even he is traveling here. He's a cosmopolitan, so he's traveling to the other planets. But what is the purpose of his travel is that he's spreading the glories of the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada was mentioning the same thing. These scientists, they're investing such huge amount of money, and they're going to a planet like moon, and they're telling that there is no life on such planet. But Srila Prabhupada tells that if you go back to Srimad Bhagavad Gita and read, there the Lord is telling that there is light in moon planet, and but the scientists are telling that it's full dark and you can't see anything. But the Shastras, there is a clear description as to the light of the moon is being given by the Lord, and there is life on the moon planet. And we can even read in Srimad Bhagavad Gita that the juice, the fruits and vegetables gain that they have is because of the moonlight that is being provided. by that is being provided. So this moon, sun, all of this is it is said that one eye of the Lord is moon and one eye of the Lord is the sun. So all of it is existing within the Supreme Lord, and those who do not have this you know the fortune to read the Shastras, they concoct on their own, they make their own speculation and state such things that there is no life on moon. But Srila Prabhupada, he always made philosophy so simple. Nobody ever could read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and understand. But Srila Prabhupada, since Prabhupada has presented it as it is, and there is no speculation done by Srila Prabhupada, we can see as to how his philosophies are so simple for a dull-headed person like us in this Kali Yuga to understand. So Srila Prabhupada has always mentioned as to how you don't have to travel to the other planet to know as to what is there. So just similarly, how Narada Muni has used even though he is traveling all over the three the planetary systems, but he is utilizing it in the devotional service of the Lord. So that is one of the points as to what Srila Prabhupada has mentioned, that nobody has to make any endeavor to travel to this other planetary systems and to examine if there is life there or not, because any planetary system, it could be the topmost planetary system, that is the Svargalok, or to the lower planetary systems, there is this cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. Any planetary system, even there is a day wherein there is a specified time period fixed even for Brahma. Even after that time period, Brahma has to come down. He has to undergo the cycle of birth and death. He has to come down to this material world, take another life form, and again in the next birth we never know what Brahma can be, because we have seen Indra has come as a hog, even though he was in that heavenly kingdom, and in spite Indraloka, he was at Indraloka, and in spite of that he had to take a form of a hog. So what we can learn is that another point that Prabhupada is trying to emphasize is that a Jivatma can go to any of the planetary system and he cannot escape the cycle of birth, death, and old age and disease. The only way where a Jivatma can, re-establish his constitutional position, and the only way wherein the chain of birth and death can be broken is when he goes back to his Supreme Father, that is Krishna. Because in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord states that uh, the verse is he the verse states as yadgatva na nivartante tadhamam paramam ma. So that is what is the Lord telling, because his abode is neither illuminated by sun nor moon, nor even electricity. And anybody who comes to my supreme abode, then they don't have to come back to this material world. The verse is just give me. Maybe I will remember it later and I can state the verse. But this is what the Supreme Lord is telling, that Yadgatvana nivartante tadhamam paramam mama. So that is what the Supreme Lord is emphasizing on, as to how anybody who goes to his Supreme Abode, he doesn't have to take a rebirth. So the next um, point that this is one of the points, and finally Srila Prabhupada has the last a few lines of the purport. It is just so wonderfully written by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is telling us to how glorious the passing away of the devotee is. And he also mentions that he mentions first of all that the passing away of Bhishma Dev should not be compared to a mundane way of a devotee leaving his body. The way devotees leave their body and the way the normal person leaves his body are two different things. They're two extreme points, and they can never be compared. That is what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, that we cannot imitate what Bhishma Dev has done. And even he mentions that the shower, there are shower of flowers, and the demigods are recognizing as to how glorious Bhishma Dev is, and they are showering the flowers as a sign of auspiciousness and respect and recognition to Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev's, here Srila Prabhupada is stating that the body of Bhishma Dev lost its material effects due to being spiritualized, due to being surcharged with spiritual realization. And Prabhupada is also giving analogy of the red hot fire. When iron comes into contact with red hot fire, so one of the Matajis, she was mentioning how beautifully Srila Prabhupada, as to how he has quoted this analogy of um, body becomes spiritualized as when iron becomes red hot when it comes in contact with fire. So what is this fire? Is that Mataji was mentioning that it is our devotional service. So how is that Bhishma Dev's body got spiritualized? It is because he performed devotional service unalloyed, and he had unalloyed, unflinching faith. Without any expectations, he performed devotional service. Bhishma Dev's entire life, we can see how many difficulties and turbulations he had to go through, and how he, at every point in his life, he always thought that any action he performed, would that be pleasing to the Lord. And he even went to such an extent that he stood on the opposite side of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he fought against his own beloved Pandavas were so dear to Bhishma Dev, and in spite of that he fought against them, just for the reason that the Supreme Lord would be satisfied by by him performing such an act. Because we can see that when we see outwardly, when we see externally, we can see that Bhishma Dev was, if anybody who looks at the actions of Bhishma Dev, they will be bewildered that to as to how this person is being called a Mahajan, this person who went against Krishna, and he fought against the Supreme Lord. All his actions were so contradictory to the statements that is being made in Srimad Bhagavatam. But when we hear from, bona fide authorities, we come to know how glorious Bhishma Dev was. Every action that he performed, he made sure that all his senses were engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. And because of him being always engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Lord was so pleased by his devotional service that he just couldn't, hold back himself from coming and standing in front of Bhishma Dev when he was quitting his body. And even without it is said that the Lord himself had come to give his darshan to Bhishma Dev, and upon seeing the Lord, that is when Bhishma Dev requested to be the object of his vision. So we can see that as to how only when one engages oneself in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, he can remember the Lord at the end of his life. When he is about to quit his body, that is when only if he has engaged himself in the devotional service throughout his entire life, only at that point of time when he's quitting his body, he can remember the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada has mentioned this analogy of the iron becomes red hot when it comes in contact with the fire. We can see as to how the iron, when it comes into the contact with fire, so it is not that immediately it is the moment it comes in contact with fire, immediately it is not that it is become we can see that it has got all the qualities of the fire. It doesn't happen like that. Only when the iron is kept for a specified period of time, and when it reaches certain temperature, we can see that the iron also becomes like fire. So similarly, when a person performs devotional service, he is no longer on a material platform, he is elevated to a spiritual platform, and he becomes, his body is no longer material, it becomes spiritual. So it is mentioned that in the Vaishnava Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, it is mentioned that when a exalted devotee quits his body, usually in the Shastras, it is being mentioned that when anybody quits his body, he is supposed to be burnt, so that the ashes of the body can be, thrown into the a holy river like Ganga or Kaveri, so that the soul attains a spiritual position or a better position. So that is the purpose. But it is in when exalted devotees pass away, it is mentioned that the bodies of the Vaishnavas are being preserved by putting salt in them. And the same thing can be witnessed in the case of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. When I was viewing the there was a glimpse that was given of the final rites that was performed to Maharaj, and His Holiness was, buried with salt. So at that point of time, I was thinking, why is this being done? And then when I was hearing to the lecture, it was being answered. It was stated in the lecture telling that because the body has already become spiritualized, because they've already engaged it in the devotional service of the Lord, it is been fully spiritualized, and such body doesn't have to be burnt, because this it is no longer a material body, it has become spiritual, and such body has to be preserved so that it can be worshipped, and the blessings of the acharyas or the senior Vaishnavas and Maharajas can be received. So that is how important it is. How that is how devotional service can could transform a material thing into a spiritual. Anything and everything engaged in the service of the Lord, including this body, which is being made out of which is nothing but a bag of blood and flesh. When even such a gross material body, when engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, it becomes spiritual. And we also can witness this in the life of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. There was a video that was put up by Guru Maharaj in his Instagram page, where Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, even in his sleep, he's performing deity service. So how can somebody, do deity service? He's performing arati. He's how can it is way beyond any material conception. So that is how important it is to engage oneself in devotional service. And finally, Prabhupada is stating that all these jayanti and ceremonies that we are performing, it should be only reserved for the appearance of the Lord and his devotees, because his devotees are dear to the Lord. And it is not that we follow any austerity as we desire to. We always have to adhere to the Vaishnava calendar. The instructions that is being mentioned by the acharyas, only the specific dates that acharyas have mentioned, we have to make sure that we celebrate only those specified festivals. So this is how glorious Bhishma Dev was. And one thing that I have learned from the passing away of even Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj is that devotees, not only devotees appearance, but the disappearance of the devotees are all. There is no time when devotees are born and when devotee dies. There is no time that Vaishnava dies. Only Vaishnavas appear, and as soon as the purpose for which the Vaishnavas have appeared is being fulfilled and accomplished, they return back and they disappear from this material world and they go back to the spiritual world to resume their spiritual services to the Supreme Lord. So these were some of the points I could gather from today's verse. So I thank you for all your patient hearing. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, पतित पावन गुरु महाराज की जय.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you very much for a nice class. Wonderfully, you grasped from the purport very, very nice points how Bhishma Dev was compared to the level of demigods and the higher planetary systems. And you gave a nice analogy of how our great sannyasis, GBC, when you add few people to them, how it shows that how exalted they have, how rapid progress they've attained. I like that the last one which you said about Jayantis. We very often see many of the normal people, huge garlands, and they make a mess of the entire thing by throwing garland wherever that hair van is being carried right up to this one. And we can see clearly how our devotee lives. What we do is we actually bring prasadam, which garlands from our temple, from which is being offered to the Lord, we bring them, and not just buy new garland and come into it. So yes, we've learned a lot from the scriptures through all the senior Vaishnavas, that how we should treat ascending off, or those kind of things. Very nice points, Mataji. We'll wait for others also to share those wonderful points.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Radha, Sugopika, Mataji, thank you for your wonderful class. We heard how you have nicely glorified His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj also. So you have aptly related from that day to today how pure Vaishnava's body is not material, but it is paka spiritual. This way, all the Vaishnavas, they honor and they respect, and they give a lot of awe and reverence to the spiritual master. And as you rightly said, the great acharyas, they appear and disappear. And for mundane people, it looks like he had taken birth and he died. They use these words. So these words are not properly suiting. So that's why for line of the acharyas, we say disappearance day, appearance day, like that. And the Lord also appears and he also disappears. Janma karma chame divyam evam bhavekti tattvattaha. Tvekta deham punarjanma neti mameti. So Arjuna. So not only the Lord's pastimes, but Lord's devotees, Acharya's pastimes, if anybody here, they will also become devotees of the Lord, because they always speak about Krishna. And Krishna says, Madbhaktyam pujyabi adhikam. And Krishna says, I am, I am aham bhakta paradhina, he says. I am in the control of my devotees. Anyway, we'll keep it open for some more time if the devotees have any clarifications and questions, etc. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat Pranam. Mataji, thank you so much for very nice class, Mataji. One thing I understood is that Lord is also glorified in the three worlds, and his devotee also is glorified in the three worlds. That Bhishma Dev was known to all the demigods and all other people of the worlds, Mataji. And they also came to pay tribute to his departure. So that thing I like much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Another point I wanted to add. In fact, at least in many paramparas, the South, I have seen that we are not allowed to keep a photograph for deceased person, normal person, even if they are a devotee. So it's kind of not recommended. Keep hang these big photographs. Some people go ahead and keep their photograph even in the altar somewhere down. So, giving that kind of a status to a normal jiva along with acharyas and many other pictures are absolutely condemned and not recommended at all. So I kind of remembered, I don't know whether it's relevant here, but I just thought that it's
Somebody
we
asked
should learn.
Prabhupada.
Uh,
I think from one great Pujari from South India, he traveled Mayapur, not Mayapur, to Vrindavan, it looks like. I forgot. So he was, Prabhupada was not feeling well. So he met and he wanted to have a personal meeting with Prabhupada, but it was not allowed beginning. Later Prabhupada allowed him, and he was mentioning, Prabhupada, still you are living, but your disciples, they are worshipping you, keeping your photo. So how to understand this? So Guru Maharaj, Prabhupada thought, okay, this man came here for some other purpose. So Prabhupada said, it's okay, it can be done. And Acharya has accepted the prayers of the disciples by keeping photo and worshipping. So it looks like superficially a kind of sentiment for the general public, but it is all transcendental. That's what we have been following it. So this has nothing to do with their fault finding or their modernamaka superstitions like that. Okay.
Yes. In fact, he told that you will be suffering. He says, I know I am suffering. I am allowed it. So he was shocked, saying that, Ocha, you are aware that you're going to be suffering. He says, yes, I have taken birth only to take the suffering of others.
Yes,
It was
that's
a
very
beautiful, very important line.
I have taken all their sufferings, Prabhupada.
Yes. Yeah.
And Prabhupada
Beautiful line.
leaving the body is glorious. Stood himself example. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hare Krishna. The time is up.
Hare Krishna.
Ah,
That's why we do not cry or do like normal mundane people when they die like that. We do not observe the departure of great Vaishnavas. Prabhuji.
We celebrate.
We celebrated.
yes.
Hare Krishna.
Ah, thank you, Vijay Tamas. Because he has got another project allotted by Krishna. Has to go there and execute.
Perform.
Yes. Another one, Radha Sugopika Mataji mentioned that people are, these politicians, other scientists, they are collecting a huge crores of rupees from the public and they are traveling to the other planets.
One-way
And,
ticket.
One way. One-way ticket and no ticket also. They may disappear somewhere they cannot come back to the earthly planet also. Here, one point I need to emphasize is when Krishna says, like Sugopika Mataji mentioned, sun and moon, they are my eyes. And also the light coming from the moon and sun is from me, Lord says. Because the Lord is using light. And also the other day, Vrajnath Prabhu was mentioning in temple, in his Bhagavatam class, that juice of the fruits and vegetables, they are coming from the moon. And even from earth, we can see the moon that it is so, light and so much glory, it is illuminating like anything. And foolish people there, they say that they went to the moon and it is very dark. And how to understand? It's very easy. A LKG child also can understand. That's why our Amal Puran is very, very authenticated for us to understand. Sorry, I went a little bit away.
No, Prabhu, correct, Prabhu. That's why Sugopika used the word, they are not fortunate to read these books. So, how beautiful the word was. Not fortunate, and they think it is dark. Whereas Lord is telling all the ability. I don't need electricity at this one in the Tat Bhasha Surya. Yes.
So they would have landed somewhere else, and there is
Yes.
no proof that they have reached the moon planet. It is very hundreds and hundreds of minus degree centigrade is there. Otherwise, how can he spread the moonlight, around the world? It's not so easy. Okay, so we'll keep it open for your announcements, prayers to be offered. The first announcement is the Bhagavatam speaker, Her Grace Radha Sugopika Mataji's appearance day.
Very
So
good.
her birthday today. So requesting all the devotees kindly pray for her spiritual well-being so that till her last assignment in this body, she can serve Guru and Krishna to spread the glories of the holy name of the Lord and the Lord pastimes and serving the Vaishnavas. Maybe at the end I can play the birthday song for Mataji. Anybody else? Any other announcements? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu, we could register for the teachers training. All four of us from our sector could complete the registration process.
Okay.
But the only thing is we don't know whether it is done or not. They only have to confirm. So there is no way of checking whether our registration is confirmed.
Now
Money's got debited.
Okay, you can just update Sachi, Navdeep Sachi Mataji.
Done.
He's the coordinator.
Yes.
Okay.
ಹರೇ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಪ್ರಭುಜಿ.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
ಪ್ರಣಾಮಗಳು ಪ್ರಭುಜಿ. ನಮ್ ಪ್ರಭುಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ನನ್ಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆರೋಗ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಏರುಪೇರಿದೆ. ಪ್ರಭುಜಿ ಪ್ರೇಯರ್ ಮಾಡಿ.
ಖಂಡಿತ ಮಾತಾಜಿ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾವು ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ.
ಸರಿ. ಹರೇ ಕೃಷ್ಣ.
Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
ಪ್ರಭುಜಿ.
Hare Krishna.
1 minute, Mataji. Somebody else.
ಇವತ್ತು ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ ಪ್ರಭುಜಿ.
Result.
Hari
ಯಾವ್ದು ಮಾತಾಜಿ?
ಮಿಥುನ್ ಇವತ್ ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನ ಐತೆ ಅಂತ 10:30 ಏನ ಅನೌನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
ಯಾವ್ದು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್?
SLC ಬರ್ತಾರೆ.
SSLC.
Karnataka State.
ಯಾರು ಮಾತಾಜಿ SSLC?
Mithun.
ನಮ್ಮ ಅಮ್ಮಗನು.
Mithun. Okay, we pray for Mithun that he will come out with flying colors.
ನೀವು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಅವ್ನು ಪ್ರೇ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಮಾತಾಜಿ, ಖಂಡಿತ ಅವ್ನು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ.
ಹರೇ ಕೃಷ್ಣ. ಹರೇ ಕೃಷ್ಣ. Dandot pranam. My cousin brother is not feeling well, Prabhuji. So I need Vaishnava prayers for him, Prabhuji.
Surely we'll keep him in the prayers list.